So we're now live. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Education Reimagined. I'm just going to wait another minute or two before starting to allow a few more people to join. So if you could just bear with us, just 1 minute. Okay, now it's been a minute. Let's get started. So Education Reimagined. Now, in thinking about today's session, it occurred to me that every single person in this session, and I mean every single person, has one thing in common. And one thing in common that has personal relevance to the topic today, and that is we've all been in a classroom. And that classroom may have been a traditional one, with a teacher out the front, students at desks taking notes, or not. And some of you may have grown up with some exposure to remote or distance learning. But the point is this: we've all sat listening to a teacher of some sort, and at some point we have the shared experience of, we're doing this. Excuse me, I have a question. Now, from the most shy person to the loudest, we've all reached for a way to put our hands up, to be heard, to gain a better understanding and at a deeper level to connect. So the question today is, how do we provide an environment for students in which every question is acknowledged and, let's face it, answered, in which each interaction provides some feedback? So how can students be made to feel as though they are heard amongst a sea of others? How do we do that? In fact, can we do that? And from the alternative perspective, how can educators, so the lecturers, the tutors, how can you hope to respond to every student's questions? How is that possible in today's world, where students may have questions at all hours of the day and night? Hundreds of them. And they want a response, and they want it yesterday. So this requirement to connect, to be heard, to feel as though you're not just a number, it must be an almost impossible task to accommodate this as an educator. It must be overwhelming. So this experience is common to everybody. But why is this so important today? Where does Education Reimagined fit into this? Now, there's no point in attempting to give everybody a history lesson of how the past 12 months has affected the way we communicate. In fact, it's worth acknowledging that Singapore today is again in lockdown. And so you are acutely aware of the challenges regarding communication, if not all facets of life. So why we're here today is to explore the future, to examine what's possible, what's probably not, things that perhaps may help guide our decision-making, things with amazing terms like AI, which is artificial intelligence, or ML, being machine learning, data analytics and bots. But these are very small things that can have a significant impact on the student learning experience. Now, here's a thought. What if it were possible to answer those hundreds of common questions that impact the daily life of every lecturer, every tutor? Is there a world in which the majority of easily answered questions could be seemingly magically answered? This would leave the educators to focus on higher value activities such as, teaching, researching, developing new content. Now, with all of this technology, are there opportunities or ways we could use the enormous amounts of data we keep hearing about? You may have heard of data lakes, or in some cases, data swamps, to provide insights, experiences of the students, the educators, things like student engagement, even the success or otherwise of new course materials and content. We are here today to answer some of those questions. Now, before we start properly, just a few notes to everyone. Besides the presenters, you're all on mute. So if you have questions, I'm encouraging you to post them, and you can do this throughout the session in the chat area. It'll be up the top right. We have some time set aside at the end to look at some of these, so please do post them. Now, some of your questions may be answered during the session, so it's not uncommon for there to be very few, sometimes not at all. If we run out of time and can't get to them all, we will respond to them after the event and circulate afterwards. Okay, So let's get started. I'm David Grayson from D2 and Associates. We're a consulting and advisory organisation with an absolute passion for education. We're based out of Australia, but where specifically? Well, that doesn't matter so much anymore, does it? That's part of what today is about. But enough of me. Today we'll be joined by three industry experts to help answer some questions. Firstly, by David Tang, the Enterprise Channel Director of Education Sector from Microsoft. Now, David will give us an overview of where technology is heading in the future, but more specifically, the technology platforms that are the foundations for the types of initiatives we will be hearing about today. We'll then hear from David Shin, Principal Lecturer from the Republic Polytechnic. David will speak to the Republic Polytechnic experience of enabling new ways to educate and collaborate, new ways in which education has already been reimagined. Then lastly, we'll hear from Sulabh Jain from Antares Solutions, who will give us an overview of the Cloud Collective, so the team behind these initiatives, and then provide an overview of the platform from which these reimagined initiatives are born. And with that, I'd like to hand over to David from Microsoft.
Thank you, David Grayson. I'm David Tang. I work with the education sector in Microsoft Singapore. My job is to make it easy for customers like you to take a look at edutech solutions like the ones that are presented here. Today, I'm going to share with you a topic that's been affecting all of us. What's next is that the campuses have gone virtual overnight. COVID has been a catalyst, and this has introduced new ways of teaching and learning and researching. As we have to reduce the face-to-face interactions in the challenges that we face today, we look at staff and faculty to provide an environment that students can thrive. Some are already part of this transformation because it is part of their virtual institution DNA. However, many institutions today are just trying to find time to make changes that matter. In our education transformation framework that you see here, the higher education space, Microsoft has designed a blueprint, if you will, to take a look at distinct areas of activity that resonates with leaders of these institutions. It focuses our conversations where it's needed. On the next slide, you would see an example from the University of South Florida. Now, this university has made it, if you will. They started way back with Microsoft in fiscal year 18, and their business objectives were to earn the preeminent status within their state for universities so that it unlocks incremental funding. The second thing that they wanted to do was to consolidate 3 separate schools into one unified university. And the third thing they wanted was to get listed on the US news as one of the fastest rising universities. They achieved all these 3 over the course of 3-4 years. In Horizon 1, in this example, it's not only because of what Microsoft has helped them do with our unified cloud offering. This includes Office 365 for education, the Microsoft Azure Enterprise Infrastructure, and Dynamics for their business applications needs. In FY18, they tied the One USF initiative by getting the CIO to drive a single tenant to be used throughout the 3 schools, thus unifying all their identity and allowing them to access every single platform that they have within the university. This, enabled by services intention, drove the migration of all their entities into a cloud Active Directory. Now, as you see on the bottom pillar, I am focused on the CIO decisions and intentions. Above that, we have business decision makers as well as the board of directors. And you would see that their imperatives are aligned to what we drove. On the second horizon, in FY19, the following year, we looked at student success. And as we aligned this, they had turned on Microsoft Office 365 and Dynamics 365 CRM to upgrade the student recruitment experience, thereby allowing them to provide the equity needed that students that qualify for university are provided the entry, gave them a robust system of selection as well as applying for and getting grants approved for student tuition and loans. In the following year, their investments started to pay off, and you can see that they have moved from student success in Horizon 2 over to one where they're looking at skills and employability and enabling that. To allow them to quickly respond to that, they were already building an online repository to provide online teaching and learning. This, in fact, coincidentally with the pandemic, allowed them to very quickly adapt to the environment, and they were recognized as the campus that was getting it right sometime towards the end of 2020. Now, we are in 2021, and the USF is thinking or rethinking their business models for how to eliminate wait lists, as well as the ability to improve the experience as well as increase their enrollment of students that may not need to be on site. They provided a high flex environment where they have teaching in classrooms, in halls and lecture theaters across the state, not only on campus, and as well as online, allowing them to embrace and increase their student enrollment. They also wanted to go beyond the traditional limits of a on-prem or in-person institution so that they are able to serve the needs of their state. As we look past this example, I want to share with you Microsoft's purpose. In the next slide, we empower every student on the planet to achieve more. Now, Microsoft's goal is also a philosophy that underpins our vision for education. It is certainly at events such as this, now that is no longer in person, is virtual, that in 2021, we want to take a look at the opportunities for higher education. No, X that. Now they are imperatives, because the opportunities for higher education when we first wrote this back in 2020 is no longer valid. And we had to adjust all the different pillars that you see down here. Now, what's important is we adjusted it based on what we know from what's being experienced in institutions of higher learning and what's important to the leaders, the staff and faculty, as well as the performance of their students. When we looked at this, the key part is actually new partnerships that we have to create models around with industry and government hand in hand, because the pandemic has shaped the new normal for all of us. When we look at a post-pandemic higher education system, the question to answer is, how do we use technology to make all experiences even better. And here are two examples. The first one from the Auckland University of Technology. In their current use case, we help student engagement and experience increase. We allowed the students to become citizen developers without any experience in building applications or even coding. And they created a digital workspace that all of them lived in, allowing the students themselves, by word of mouth, to create and share a connected campus through this application. And they are using all of this on Microsoft Teams. Lastly, at the University of New South Wales, we worked together with Dr. David Kellerman to build an engaging interactive environment where student engagement increased across the campus, crowdsourcing answers and crowd sharing ideas among themselves within the classroom as well as after classes, allowing them to quickly extend the knowledge that the professors had, the tutors, and the answers that the lecturers were giving into a depository that mattered and helped increase student performance. And this really is a key example that David Chin, the next speaker at Republic Polytechnic, will share with you his experience deploying and using this across his campus. Over to you.
Thank you. Look, thank you, David. Just handing over to David Chin, Principal Lecturer from Republic Polytechnic.
Thank you, David Grayson. Since when do you last attend an event where you had 3 Davids in a row, right? So just so fortunate. Okay, a bit about myself. Yeah, I teach here at Republic Polytechnic. I've been here for the last 10 years and really having a time of my life. I'm still here. I specialize in the area of teaching and research, specifically in sport education, curriculum design and assessment design, as well as education technology. Before I got into this education space, I actually spent 10 years as a regional technology journalist in a technology publishing house. So I guess I've been in touch with Microsoft and technology for a lot longer than I care to remember sometimes. So next slide, please. Just a quick background. We all from Singapore, so you know we are one of the 5 polys, the newest one in Singapore. We have leadership in problem-based learning. It's something that we have built our foundation on. But right now, besides PBL, we also do a lot of other pedagogies in RP. We are also really trying to build a space in curriculum design and assessment. And I say this because being in it for 10 years, I can see how we have evolved and how we are further kind of changing the way we look at curriculum design and assessment with regard to technology and educational technology specifically, right? So the stuff that we're all talking about today about how the future of learning will change. So that's how the design, delivery, and assessment will change. We also have a lot of leadership in teaching with technology. So we've been doing this for many years, and I run classes and consulting with companies on how do you include technology into curriculum as we try to push the boundaries of the school outside of RP into corporations that need help with education and with pedagogy and assessment and curriculum design within the organizations, right? And that leads me to the 4th area that we kind of lead in, and that's in workplace learning. So it's really, as RP, we want to really be relevant and be the institution of choice for both full-time students, which are students that come in on a regular day, and part-time students, the people that come in for night classes, the people that come in for courses once in a while. And when you look at workplace learning, it means you don't really need to come to the campus anymore, or any organization for that matter, to learn. You can learn where you are in your workplace, and we are using technology and a lot of other approaches to see how can we partner with organizations and really push the learning back into the workplace, right? Because you don't need to be in a classroom to learn, and that's not necessarily the best place to learn in any case. We do have 7 faculties. I'm in the sport faculty. So we have science, engineering, communication, hospitality, etc. Notably, we have a wonderful Republic Cultural Center. When things are not so bad and we're not in lockdown, it's actually like a performing arts theater that's out here in the north, and it's a beautiful place. And if you come down to our campus, it's totally green. There's a huge big level tree where it's a giant lawn, and it's really high tech in a way, right? But also clean and green. Student profile, yeah, we have about 14,000 students full time and part time, and really. If you're in Singapore, you would know that we have a falling birth rate and not enough students, kind of young students in a way. So our goal is really to build on this continuing education space, or CET, and that's really where the adult students come in. And again, when adult students come in, they have 3 lives. They have a work life, a family life, and a school life, right? And that makes learning all the more challenging for them, and it causes us to want to relook at the way we deliver it in terms of flexibility, etc. All right, next slide, please. So no history lesson, but you're all aware of this. We last year, January, we had this terrible thing that came on us. It went from green to orange to red and everything in between. Around March last year, that happened, so just a big mess. I was involved with a couple of others in RP, just trying to get things online. Mind you, we had MS Teams, Microsoft Teams in our infrastructure for like several years. I did notice it, never used it, and neither did anyone that I know. I didn't know anyone using it because basically we had face-to-face classes. So in a sense, like within a week, we went from 0 to 100. We learned how to use it. We taught students how to use it, and we pushed everyone on campus on Microsoft Teams. And from then on, it's just been looking at, okay, now that we have to use Microsoft Teams and learn other platforms like Zoom, so we're not just on one platform, we are on multiple. How do we actually now change and redefine the experience, right? Because we're all about, even in the classroom, we constantly talk about the concept of engaging learning experiences. And we want to bring that same engaging learning experience into the blended or the hybrid or the whatever classroom you call it, right? So if you, one more click and you were 18 May today. Last year, we had about 6 cases a week, just a good reminder I just noted. And I think even with the current lockdown, we are kind of currently maybe at close to 40, 50 a week, but it's a far cry, right? We are in a lot better place than we were a year ago. And in terms of what we have done with our approach to teaching and learning, we are in a lot better place too. So if you go to the next slide, it's not that we woke up one morning and decided we're going to go into a technology. I think as a country, we have been planning this all along, and being in the ed tech space, 2020 and before was the year we were really looking at pushing everything on, not everything online, but really creating flexible, versatile learning. So getting into this space of taking every lesson and e-enabling it, right? Using technologies like SCORM, and if you know what that is, it's a format that allows you to run an e-lesson in any platform, and getting staff to train them to do e-development, right? So if they're only familiar with doing a class face-to-face, then how do you now put in an online element, create a small learning package, throw it online, make sure that people can learn anywhere they are, anytime. And that was kind of the goal, right? And we went into 2020, and with all the happenings, we actually looked at Microsoft and said, okay, what else can we do with it, right? We have people at home, we have people who are not able to connect in face-to-face, so how can we enhance that? And it's already been on our roadmap to really go and into the space of analytics, data analytics, right? To teach, well, everyone in Singapore, right? How do you continue to be relevant by knowing how to make sense of big sets of data, big data, right? And the government has been releasing data sets into the public so that people can experiment with it. So for teaching and learning, how do we take all the data that's being collected by the systems and make sense of it? So again, it's not something that we did because of the lockdown and the pandemic. We also had a future roadmap to say how are we going to use artificial intelligence and the like in the future to transform the way we teach and learn, and do these personalized learning packages, etc. The only thing the pandemic has done is that I believe, and we are probably going to accelerate what we are doing by about 4 years. So I think, in my view, my personal opinion, by 2024, we will be having personalized learning in the system in our country for a majority of the organizations, because we are really going into this a lot faster than we ever thought possible. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's a needs analysis. When we looked at how do we want to create a better learning experience for our students, given that everyone was online, and even when we were back in class, we didn't want to throw away the online system, right? So everyone was on MS Teams, Zoom, etc. for 3 months. When we were allowed to come back to class, we didn't want to say, okay, let's just forget that system and go back to the way life was before, because that's not a good thing. We've learned so many things and valuable lessons indeed. So we sort of said, okay, do people need more machine learning? Do we need to kind of do more AI and put it in? Do we need to put more technology to help people master their learning? Do we need to see how we integrate pedagogy more into an online system, because we've never really done that before in a big way? I mean, we've done that before in asynchronous lessons, right? We do have pedagogy there, but now we're looking at totally hybrid, totally blended. How do we make that kind of work? And in the end, we said, okay, we had three things we wanted to do after doing this needs analysis. Next. So we decided that we wanted to, as David Grayson said in the beginning, how do we make sure that no student has an unanswered question, right? And given that we have this huge, big interactive learning platform that's already existing, and everyone knows how to use it, students and teachers. So even when we're back in class, we wanted to make sure that we continue to have this separate back channel, for lack of a better word, a back infrastructure that allows students to continue interacting and learning, and having a knowledge base then, mind you, not a chatbot, even though we have got confused with, people got confused with what we were doing. It's not a chatbot. And to create a knowledge base where if students ask a question, they get an answer, right? So to what David Grayson mentioned, right? How do you create a system whereby you can respond to every student's question? Wouldn't that be wonderful, right? And it's a nice thought, and that's something we went in to do, right? And so do that knowledge base, create this online learning community, have students self-directed, which means that at the end of class, 4 p.m., 3:30, whatever, they can continue learning because they can continue asking questions and receiving answers. And even on the weekends when they're studying for exams, they can still be interacting with this wonderful knowledge base after school, etc. And the main idea, if you look at the bottom picture, is that we wanted to make sure that to give ourselves a bit more time, right, to do creative work. So if the thinking is that if the bot kind of took over answering questions, then we could just kind of do other more creative stuff. So when we did go in, we went in with 4 modules, 79 classes, and 1,600 students for the first pilot. And we rolled it out. We told all the lecturers, hey, don't worry, you all answer questions in class every day, right? So you simply need to answer it on this new system called QBot. And whenever you answer a question once, you don't need to answer it again because it's saved forever as a pair. And any student asking that same question will get an answer. So within half a semester, this huge knowledge base will be fully built, and students will be able to benefit from it almost from the start. So key learnings that we came up with after the pilot is that when students first go into the system and they ask a question and the computer goes, QBot says, I don't know the answer to that, let me tag the lecturer. Okay, What happened then is this. We had many lecturers who were really excited about this project as well. I said, okay, good, let's try this out. The moment many students started asking questions and lecturers started being creative and creating Q&A activities so that students could practice asking questions on the system, it became a bit contrived in a way, right? Students were kind of, you have to ask a question now because we have a question asking activity, and then you have 25 questions, maybe 30 questions being asked, and lecturers flooded because every question takes a lecturer. So there began to be a lot of unanswered questions to start with. And when the students thought that it was a chatbot and they went and asked a question and they didn't get an answer, they were kind of discouraged. Okay, this bot doesn't know anything, so it's not useful. So we struggled through the first half semester, and eventually the knowledge base did get built. So that's a wonderful thing. There was online learning, there was learning after school, people were using it, and the bot was actually answering a lot of questions, although there were still many unanswered questions. So another good benefit was that we realized that in the beginning, students were asking what questions, and towards the end, they were asking why questions. So the quality of the questions was getting better, which was wonderful for us. There was one concern though that, the moment I ask a question on the system and I don't get an answer, I say, if I went to Google, it would be a lot faster. So reservations from teachers and students alike, if they can get a faster answer from Google, why bother, right? And because of the time that lecturers needed to spend answering questions, we realized that this concept of us having more free time to do creative stuff and relaxing and being more effective at interventions really didn't happen. So if you just go to the next, so everything happened a little bit, but definitely the one which I was most excited about didn't happen, unfortunately. So next slide. What happened next was that we decided to go with a new, same learning needs, but what became apparent was that the learning experience, so the top right, was the most important thing, right? So as much as the technology was good, the pedagogy and the learning experience still needed to be the lead, and the technology would be something that, if we can get the experience and the pedagogy right, the technology, we can find a way to do things that we want to do, right? The other thing that became apparent, if you can go to the next animation, was that when we go back to pedagogy again, we realized that if you look at something so simple that we use all the time, that if you want to motivate a student, right, and we know the research shows over and over again that to motivate students, you need to do three things. Number one, give them autonomy, give them a sense of connectedness and relatedness, and build competence. And if we just focus on those three things, students would be motivated. So we decided, okay, how are we going to give students more autonomy? How are we going to make them feel more connected? And how are we going to build their competence? Another good thing, side thing, is that during the 3 months of lockdown, we realized that students were being very affected by not being able to connect one another face to face. So really the connectedness was really missing. If I spoke to you for every day of the week for 4 hours in a format like this, and no one turned on their videos, right, like what's happening now, it would really be tough to feel connected. And as an older person, I feel it, but as a younger person and developing that social development side of myself, I can understand why it got so tough for them, right? So next slide. So in the next implementation, we decided that we had 4 modules, 79 classes, and a couple of nearly 2,000 students. In our next one, we decided to increase that. So we in our current implementation, we have doubled it to about 7 modules, and about the student numbers have increased about 4,000. And we decided together, working closely with Antares, that we wanted to focus on the question more than the answer. And they worked out with us that instead of tagging the lecturer, now they will tag other students. And that has worked out quite well. So for example, we in our briefings, we said, if you have a question, just ask. Right? We try not to be contrived about making question asking things, right? But just ask. And guess what? When you do ask a question, a random student in your class will be tagged to answer it, not a lecturer. And guess what? That students may not give you the best possible answer, but that's not important. And the students actually agreed with us when we spoke to them at the focus group. They said, look, we're not here to get a straight answer, because if we wanted that, we'll go to Google or go to our lesson resource. We are more interested in the conversation. We are more interested in the interaction, right? And they realized that was the interesting thing. And we said, look, but Qbot can't do, it works in question and answer pairs. It can't do a facilitative type of conversation at this point. So we said, nevertheless, it's fine, right? So we don't tag the lectures anymore. So there's fewer unanswered questions, and every student gets tagged and with questions that their classmate asks. And so the S student refers to the tagging, and we decided that we would try to be less contrived about building in question and answer activities, but that we would build it into the flow of the lesson, how we design, deliver, and assess. We would do revisions that are based on, let's say, a Qbot activity, where you can ask a question to kind of do as a revision activity, right? And we will also tell the lecturers that, look, we're not trying to fake it. It's going to be work, and we need you to buy in and do some of that work by preloading some questions, so that the students don't appear to hit a totally blank question wall when they get in. And we've also enabled, together with Antares, a private chat function. Some students told us that they were uncomfortable with asking a question that everyone gets to see. So we said, okay, let's work with Antares to enable private chat. So now our students, if they feel embarrassed about asking a question to everyone, they can kind of go and ask it privately. And that seems to have worked out pretty well too. So next slide. The most amazing thing happened in that we're not over this semester, but if you look at the italics, we just asked students to do some quick reflections, and we didn't force this out of them, right? The three things that I'm going to share here reflect what has happened that has amazed us, right? So I get to see different perspectives and opinions and concepts as we learn from each lesson, as Qbot will throw the question to other classmates. So they actually like the perspectives that are coming in. Right or wrong answer doesn't really matter, right? It's the perspectives that matter. Another student on the right-hand side said, and help to answer everyone's question. So they were actually quite interested in us answering a question where they saw their name appearing as a tag. And finally, the one at the bottom said, asking and answering questions among my peers benefits me. So they realized that by simply asking and answering questions, regardless of whether during class or after class, on weekends, etc., they did find a certain level of benefit. So this is something that we wanted to happen. We didn't think it would happen so fast, but it did. So that's really something exciting that we to share, at least from our experience. So next slide. So just moving ahead, we are really looking at how do we take this a step further. We're looking at how do we tie in more resources that we have which are not publicly available. So we have LinkedIn, we have a couple of other sources of smart books, etc. So we're saying that, look, if the students ask a question, there's a keyword there that's related to an existing resource, a micro-learning resource, a video resource in RP that we have, how do we share that? We're also trying to get more automation done, because obviously when we get from 7 to 10 to 15 to 100 classes, we need automation. We still want to focus on the learning experience, and we definitely want to make this adaptive, right? So the system adapts to whatever question the student is asking, we will adapt and be able to deliver something that's relevant. And finally, we want to look at tying something more to their workplace. So we currently, every week, we can see the top contributors in the whole, in all the students on the pilot. And we want to be able to say that if you have really been helping answering questions and being involved in youth learning community, we want to be able to give you a top contributor badge that cannot be faked. So which means that when you do leave RP and graduate, you can be proud to have a badge that says you are a top contributor in RP, and it will be kind of signed and somehow digitally signed by us. And it's something that can help you in your future employment from then on. So that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I'll pass the time back to David Grayson, and happy to answer your questions later.
Thank you very much, David. We will have some questions. Two things I'd like to point out is the first one is that I'm sure when David said the students will Google questions, I'm sure he really meant they'll be using Microsoft Bing. And the second one was, is the potential to have personalised learning across Singapore by 2024. That is really quite something. So thank you, David. And yes, we do have questions for you. But now I'd like to hand over to Sulabh Jain from Antares Solutions, and Sulabh will explain the why and the how that's really behind the development of the platform that supports these initiatives. So over to you, Sulabh.
Thank you, David Grayson. Thank you for the amazing presentations, David Tang and David Chin as well. I learned a lot from that. Even though I work closely with both of you, it's always very insightful to see your views in the presentation. So hi everybody, pleasure to meet you all. My name is Sulabh Jain and I'm the education industry lead for Antares. Building off the presentations from David Tang and David Chin, I wanted to give you a quick overview of Alex, or the adaptive learning experience platform that we're implementing for a number of customers around the world. But before I do that, let me give you a quick overview of the Cloud Collective. So you'll notice that in all our communication and information that is shared with you, it is under the brand called Cloud Collective, which is the logo on the bottom of this slide. Cloud Collective is an alliance of 3 Microsoft Gold partners, Antares, ICOM, and Quorum, that have deep technical capabilities in all aspects of the Microsoft technology stack, ranging from building AI applications, modern apps, implementing Office 365 solutions, security solutions, infrastructure solutions, and so on. So we go to market as one, and it allows us to provide the same agility and deep technical capabilities that our customers love, but at the same time allows us to provide the end-to-end capabilities that our customers need in implementing Microsoft technologies. So let's go back to Alex. With Alex, our purpose is to help students reach their full potential. And that is really central to what we do on Alex on a day-to-day basis, and how we go about research and development to advance and evolve the platform for our customers. One of the ways we improve student experience is by actually making the staff experience better and in saving them time, so they have more time to spend with students. So they have more time in delivering personalized education to students based on their strengths and weaknesses. But more about this later. If you look at Alex, our core purpose is to actually build learning communities. Put simply, Alex is a data-driven AI-based platform that not only builds learning communities with students and academics, but it also provides a personalized learning experience for students involved. Alex helps improve the student and the faculty experience and the perception of the institution. We often find that students and academics that use this technology are more likely to recommend the institutions they're studying with their known ones. Alex also improves the overall student engagement by building social connections and learning communities, and in turn improves the likelihood to complete their course. And lastly, the institutions using Alex are seen as more innovative in the industry and drive more interest from students and faculty who are looking for a place to study or teach. So the Alex platform comprises of 3 main components. It has a digital learning assistant called QBot that you heard David Chin talk about. It builds an open and inclusive learning community that promotes questions and knowledge sharing among students and teachers. QBot is built into every single team in Microsoft Teams and uses AI to answer previously asked questions. It learns from every question and answer and gets smarter and smarter over time. The next component is the analytics engine, which provides deep insights into patterns and trends and provides information on how students are engaging with the content. It identifies which students are engaged, not engaged, and may require attention. The analytics engine is built on research on how social communities effectively work. For example, we know that students with a high network tend to perform better than others. Students tend to group together with other students that tend to score similarly. And teachers tend to spend more time with students that are high performers, and so on. And recent capability we've added through Analyticus, a partner of ours in US. We can now look into student submissions or pieces of content they've written supplement that information we have about them in the LMS and other student information systems, and create a portrait of the student's characteristics based on 16 powerful building blocks that are categorized in 4 categories that look at the student's self-management and planning skills, the social and teamwork skills, emotional indicators such as anxiety, depression, resilience, self-esteem, and their sense of achievements, learning styles, and learning difficulties. And this allows our platform to provide very timely nudges to the students at the right time. And lastly, our provisioning engine makes it all happen. So it integrates with the learning management systems and other student information systems to draw all the information it needs. It then sets up the classes in teams based on how academics have set up their courses in the learning management system itself, and provides a zero-touch experience for all of the academics, whilst at the same time setting up teams as a platform for communication and collaboration needs to enhance the overall student experience and to form effective learning communities. So the ALEX platform is built to cater to the needs of students, teachers, and the institution. For students, it builds a social and inclusive learning community with fellow students and academics. It promotes greater student-to-student interactions, helps students with remote learning and asking questions after the class, and promotes active and self-directed learning among students. The questions and answers are created per topic and therefore are authentic, as they're self-curated by the students and teachers as opposed to from a textbook. Students value the mean to ask a question, knowing that their question will probably lead to a discussion, collaboration, and an answer. And it allows students to gain recognition, opportunity, and engagement as part of a community. And you heard some of these things that were covered by David Chin before. From a teacher's perspective, it allows the teachers to address new areas of inquiry, confident that the routine questions will be answered as the knowledge bank builds up, and therefore allows teachers more time to engage with the students. The detailed analytics helps teachers understand what questions students are asking, what topics have most questions, and what student networks are forming. And it provides detailed information on the student's personality, preferred learning styles, so they can personalize the delivery of the material for each of the students. For the institution, it drives better educational outcomes by providing greater value from existing investments in technology through integration and automation with existing systems. It also allows the institution to advance to adaptive learning experience with digital delivery mapped to the existing learning management system, and allows the institution to scale the system as required without additional capital expenditure. And lastly, it allows the educational institution to create a compelling point of difference in the quality of experience for both students as well as the academics. So how do we implement ALEX? Firstly, ALEX is a SaaS-based platform, which means it exists in the cloud. You can see that a far broader set of competencies and support exists beyond mere consumption of the ALEX platform. We typically start with an assessment and benchmarking exercise to determine current state of both existing systems and user maturity. We then offer pilot programs where we introduce ALEX to the institution by a select pilot group across a 6-month period, during which we provide adoption and technical services assistance throughout. Once general learnings, experiences, specific changes have been made and successfully applied, the platform is then ready for a broad implementation across additional lectures, courses, students, etc., and the platform can be consumed as any other SaaS product. So that is it. Thank you for your time. My email is here if you want to reach out to me with any questions you have. If you would like to see some of the work we've done using this platform, there is also a video available on the link provided. And if you're interested in the platform, I recommend organizing a demo of the platform with your academics to gather broad interest. And if the academics are interested, we can then discuss what a pilot program might look like for you. So thank you again for your time. I'll pass it on to David now to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Sulab. Now we have a number of questions. We'll just, they've been part answered in the chat, but just for everyone's benefit. And this will go directly to you, David Chin. So have you had any worries about security, and how do you manage governance?
Okay, so we are a public agency, and anything that we adopt needs to go through the stringent GovTech requirements, and all that was cleared by due process. So no issue with that. Nothing is being deployed that doesn't keep to our bank-like security processes.
Very good. Now, this is a multiple multiple answer question in a way, which is we would love to know more about how it was implemented at RP, especially from a communications or adoption perspective.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. As you can imagine, in RP, we would be doing multiple. This is not the only EdTech initiative that we have. We have, like, at any one time, 5, 6 of them going on at the same time. So the flood of information going to students of things we're trying and testing and experimenting can be quite a lot, lectures included. And I think what we've learned a lot is that the communication is critical, the way we position it, the clarity, the timing, the regular updates, the putting in place, for example, pre-semester communications that kind of flow down from the module leads to the lecturers, then the students, and then at the start of semester, again, going through a very structured format of, okay, first let's do a very quick, kind of what do you do on first day of class kind of a tutorial, and then straight away following up with them at regular intervals to make sure that no one feels lost, and if they feel lost, they get support. If they don't feel lost, we're not forcing them to use anything, but we are saying that, look, let's look at people that have been lecturers and students that have been using it and experiencing some good benefits from it, and just sharing the experiences at regular kind of forums and chat sessions, right? But keeping it really, really short, like, half an hour, because really there's so much things to do, and we rather people want more than one less of something.
All right, another one for you, David. That's David C. What real benefits have you noticed to both your institution and the students? And by that, the question is around measurable benefits.
Okay. We are, as in everything we do, we conduct research, and this is no exception. So between Pilot 1 and Pilot 2, there was a research piece going on, and we did qualitative and quantitative with focus groups, etc. So everything you see in Pilot 2 was based on research findings on the experience and etc. that came out of that. So in terms of measurable benefits, yeah, it's very hard to say, right? We do correlate. We did correlate exam results, etc., to the level of interactivity of students that were on the system. But again, I think it would be kind of premature to make any kind of strong link, right? Because there's so many other things that goes on in a classroom. But we do have that data, and at some point, when we scale up big enough, we will try and see whether there's any real patterns and not something we're trying to read into. As to other measurable benefits, we will just kind of we know exactly what we're going to measure, the experience, and we have focus groups that are going to go on, and at the end of the session, at the end of the season, sorry, the semester. So at the end of that, we will kind of take a look at it and see what else we want to adjust. Yeah, but I'm not really answering your question here, but we do measure it, but it's really hard to put something very specific on it that I'll be at liberty to share right now. Sorry, David Gray, you're mute. Your mic's off.
Oh, yes. Sorry, my mistake there, David. Thank you. Sure. There are some very interesting questions that we're going to have to park and answer and sure. And send out. So thank you for that. Now I just need to do a quick recap. So today we started with the problem we've all experienced: how to stay connected, to get the information we need in a timely manner at a time that suits us, how to learn as part of a community and have a more personalised experience. So we looked at it from two areas. One is from the perspective of the educators, so how can they better respond to the deluge of questions, and more specifically those that are similar and easily answered. allowing them to focus on higher value activities. And through the background and view of the future from David Tang and real world experience of David Shin, we then saw that the way students engage at Republic Polytechnic today is different from how it used to be. So those questions are being answered. We're communicating via a common platform that allows AI to provide meaningful insights into engagement, and these interactions that they serve as the basis for agile development and testing of new capabilities. So I do hope that some of the true value of the approaches undertaken by Republic Polytechnic has been understood, and with the confidence that change is indeed possible. I'm sure I heard that personalised learning may be the norm across Singapore by 2024, but we'll leave that with David. Now, we're almost at time, and with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending, plus David, and Sulab, and not forgetting Lara and Ivy from the Cloud Collective running in the background. So I hope that you've all learned something new, or indeed can see a place where these types of approaches and capabilities can help improve the student and staff experience and ultimately help people connect and stay engaged along the way. So lastly, should you have any follow-up questions, we're only a phone call, a link, or an email away. And who knows, it may be a bot that answers your initial question. Or not. It's getting harder and harder to tell. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful day. So thank you.